Well, thank you everybody for joining. This is Bill Van Orsdel from BookFuel with today's Wednesday webinar on self-publishing. Today we're going to talk about how to optimize your Amazon sales page for maximum book sales. Of course, again, I'm Bill Van Orsdel. There's my phone number and my email address. You are welcome anytime after this event is over to give me a call, send me an email. I'm happy to help you with any questions you might have about your self-publishing journey. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody that I'm going to record both the audio and the slide set that we're going to look at today. And tonight, sometime around midnight, you'll get a little email that says thank you for attending, and it'll give you the chance to, it'll give you a link in case you want to watch this later or send it to a friend. Also, let me just sort of check our assumptions real quick. I'm going to assume that everyone on our call has researched your market. So you know exactly who your target market is, you know what your genre is, you know what your pricing should be. You've done a thorough job of researching the neighborhood bookshelf, if you will, that your book's going to sit on, and that you have or you're about to put a book up in the Amazon system. And of course, when I say Amazon, in almost all cases in this presentation, I could also be saying barnesandnoble.com, the Google Play Store, Apple, or Kobo, or any online bookstore. You already have metadata in place. Okay, so right off the bat, there's that evil word, metadata. But essentially, metadata is nothing more than all of the information that goes along with your book file in a bookstore. So these are the things that help bookstores sell your books, and of course, your metadata shows up on your sales page. I'm also assuming that you can modify and you have control over your metadata. I've talked to lots of authors who have used publishing services that don't allow you to control or access your metadata. So you either have to call support or you have to send them an email, or they just plain won't listen to you. But the bottom line is that I'm assuming that you can get at your metadata one way or another. And I'm also assuming that this is part of a bigger marketing plan. Our online book sales page on Amazon is nothing more than a conversion page, right? All of the marketing, the awareness marketing we do outside during our book promotion efforts usually drives people to that Barnes & Noble or Amazon or Kobo or Apple or Google Play Store to buy your book where they hit your conversion page. Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor. Our sponsor, of course, is BookFuel. BookFuel is the new service from WaveCloud. That's our company. This is not a sales pitch, though. I'm not even going to bother to tell you much about BookFuel, other than it's simply a web wizard. It's an assistant. It'll help you with your publishing journey. It's pretty smart. Now, actually, right now it's in closed beta or limited release beta at bookfuel.com. So if you do go take a look at it, please be easy on it. We're still improving it. This session tonight is not a how to do it. I'm not going to show you screenshots about how to upload your book or how to modify your key phrases, but I'm going to talk about what we need to do to make our page as powerful as possible. Our goal is to help writers become successful. It's our number one priority. It informs every single thing we do. So I hope that the information that you get out of this tonight will help you. I always like to start our presentation with the end in mind. I know that a lot of people, you get on a webinar and you're paying a lot of good rapt attention for 5 minutes and then you're drifting. You're multitasking, and sometimes you might even have to leave. So I'm going to start out with the conclusions, and I'll circle back to these at the end. But here are the 9 key conclusions about how to optimize your Amazon sales page. A professional book cover drives interest. When people get to your conversion page, your Amazon book sales page, the book cover is the very first thing that their eye should jump to. So you've got to have a very strong book cover. We'll talk about what makes a strong book cover, but it's absolutely critical to have successful selling from your Amazon page. Book title, when you select your book title, listen, you need to know that that is both an artistic and a search engine optimization element of your sales page. All right, so yes, we want to have something that lets us express our artistic skills, but we also have to recognize that the title of our book and the subtitle of our book play an important role in people finding our book. Reviews that you earn from your readers, those act as social proof. And without social proof, it's going to be very difficult to sell a book. Think about how when you shop in the Amazon store, when you go look at a book page, you probably glance right away at, do they have 4 stars, 3 stars, 5 stars, and how many reviews do they have supporting that star rating? So social proof, if you think about purchase behavior as awareness, interest, trial, purchase, Social proof can be a substitute for trial. Your prices for your ebook and for your print book should match your strategy. Is your strategy to maximize your revenue? Is it to maximize your readership? Is it to introduce people to your series? Are you trying to get reviews? There are a number of different strategies you can use, and your strategies for your book should evolve over time. And your price for your book should evolve over time. It's going to be rare for you to just set a price and forget it and never come back to it. You're going to want to experiment with it. You're going to want to move it around. As your book ages, you're going to want to take a look at it again. Your book description sets the hook, right? It is the one element on your Amazon sales page that is designed to get people to immediately click on the buy button. You want a very strong book description that is compelling. It makes people want to buy this book. We'll talk about a couple of standard formulas for fiction book descriptions and nonfiction book descriptions. We recommend to all authors that you have a print-on-demand version. It offers choice. It makes you look more professional. It's just something, especially in the nonfiction world, that readers are keen to see. Categories, or sometimes called genres, or sometimes called subject areas, or in the Amazon world, browse paths. Your book's browse paths, or genres that you select for your ebook and then again for your print book, are very important for people that are browsing for a book of a certain kind. Like let's say I'm looking for a science fiction space marine book to read. All right, I'm going to probably type in something like science fiction space marine, or I'm going to go drill into the science fiction space marine subcategory and look at the top books. So they also help with your rankings. If you're able to pick a category that's small enough and you can pop your sales up, you can get yourself into the #1 position. And that's something you can always claim. If you were #1 seller on Amazon in a certain category, and once you get yourself up in that top 100, top 10, top #1 position, you'll find yourself being recommended by Amazon as people are browsing other books. Categories or genres, it's actually one of those invisible things that happens behind the scenes that you can influence or you can set. Similarly, keywords or key phrases, another sort of invisible element to your book sales page, but very important. We'll talk about how you can use the right key phrases to improve your on Amazon or in Amazon search engine optimization. And then finally, if you haven't created one yet, you're going to want to create an author page. It adds credibility. It adds chances for engagement. It's very important. Now let's talk about each one of these in more detail. But before we do, let's talk about why all this matters. Why should we bother to spend 50 minutes? Actually, this morning's presentation ran over. I think I ran over about 10 minutes or 8 minutes long. I'll try not to do that this evening. But why does this matter? This matters because, as I said before, this Amazon sales page or this online bookstore sales page that you are creating with your metadata, it is designed to convert the people who visit your page to buy your book and not somebody else's book, and not bounce away and click away to another site or another page. The idea is once you've driven traffic to the site, you want to convert that into a sale. And of course, this, as I said before, this is applicable to any channel that's selling either your print book or your ebook. Your point of, because you're really at the point of sale, your point of sale presentation will positively affect your book sales. If you do a poor job of it, you're going to turn people off. They're probably going to make a snap decision and they'll never come back to see your book. Or if they do, they'll come back and they'll see the cover and they'll be visually reminded, oh, I chose not to buy this last time. I'm not going to buy it this time either. By the same token, improving your point of sale page, it requires work. This is not something that we're going to finish this webinar and then 15 minutes later you're going to go implement these 9 suggestions or 3 of them and stick a flag in the ground and declare victory. This may take you a couple of days at a minimum to get this stuff done right. You need to research your bookshelf. You need to research your competitors. Now, it's funny, I call the other people in your genre competitors, but they're not really. And I think Hugh Howey, I was at a conference where Hugh Howey spoke about 2 months ago, and yeah, he had a great take on this. He said, look, the other people that write science fiction books, and they write good ones, those authors are not my competition. They're actually my friends, and they're my friends because they are getting people interested and excited in reading more books in the same category that I write in. And so if we can get more people interested in reading books and reading more of them, then maybe they'll buy my book as well. So you've got to get out there and research your neighbors, research your neighborhood, and figure out what do those books look like? What trim size are they in? How are they priced? What are the compelling images and the color palettes that they're using on the front of their book? Where is weakness? Where is dominance? How can I use that information to make the presentation of my book better? It's very simple. The more books you sell, the more books you will sell. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. Let's talk about book cover goals. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did a whole webinar, 45 minutes long, on how to write or how to design book covers. I think we're going to do another one of those in the next few weeks. We got a lot of positive response. I want to get more book designers on here. I want to talk about their method and share that information with you and get some interviews going. So keep your eyes open for that. But at the very least, if you engage a professional book cover designer, you need to be able to art direct their efforts on your behalf. Okay? And there are basically, it's very simple. There are 3 or 4, if you're a nonfiction author, goals that you want. Goal number 1, and by the way, I want to point out real quick, I am more than happy to send these slides to anyone who wants to send me an email or give me a call, so you don't have to write all this stuff down. But number 1, your book cover has to capture the roving eye of the browsing customer that comes to your book sale page, to your book sales page on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It's got to grab their eye immediately. It's got to be the very first thing they look at on the page. And it should be, by the way. If you take a close look at your Amazon sales page, it's usually the only major graphic on the page above the fold. So it needs to capture their eye with a striking image, a striking color palette, maybe a striking composition, a juxtaposition of images. So it's got to sort of freeze them and get them to say, wow, wait a minute, that's interesting. Also, it's got to confirm your genre. So take all the text off of your book, your name, your title, anything else that you might have put on your book, and leave only behind the images, the color palette, the composition, and look at your book and pass that to someone that you think reads in your genre and say, what genre is this book? Don't tell them what genre it is. Ask them to confirm what it is. And if they can't confirm for you what genre that is, this is either a pure science fiction space, a military science fiction book, or this is a military science fiction book with a dash of a love story in it. You need people to be able to say, oh, this is a weight loss book. This is a book on public speaking. This is a book on how to be more confident in business. Without the text, they need to be able to confirm that this is the book that they're really looking for. It also needs to convey your professionalism, right? You're going to spend time editing and producing and making this book highly competitive. Your book cover is going to tell people that at a glance. You're going to have great composition, great typography, good thumbnail readability, right? As your book image shrinks on the page, it's still readable enough to get the title and the author name out of it and to understand what the primary image is. You're using images or using themes that are competitive in your genre, and you've got very high image quality. That's very important to right off the bat convey your professionalism. And I got to add one more goal if you have a nonfiction book, and that is your cover should communicate your benefit promise. Your benefit promise is be a more confident public speaker. Your benefit promise is lose 40 pounds in 40 days. You definitely, somewhere on your cover, and it might be just a subtitle or your title, you want to communicate to your nonfiction readers what your benefit promise is going to be. And by the way, I want to remind you, you are welcome as a group to interrupt me at any time. Throw a question up here in the question box. I'll keep one of my eyes on it, one of my 2 eyes on it, and I'll immediately try and answer that question right away if I can. If not, we'll table it and we'll answer it at the end. I want to show you some examples of fiction covers, and I've got another example set of nonfiction covers. I want to point out a couple of things. Now, this book on the left, The Atlantis Gene, is a self-published title. The book in the middle is traditionally published, and the book on the right is self-published. So I'm not a professional book cover designer, right? I can't tell you that that's the right color palette mix or that's the right simplicity or the right color scheme. I know a little bit, but just enough to be dangerous. What I always do is I ask myself those 3 or 4 questions for my fiction and nonfiction books. Do I have an outstanding or arresting image? Can I look at the book, remove the text, and decide that I know exactly what that genre is or the subject area of a nonfiction book? Does the cover convey professionalism to me? Let's take a look at The Atlantis Gene. One of the first things I want you to notice about The Atlantis Gene is notice that it's slightly different in proportion to the other two books. Now, I actually think that A.G. Riddle, when he created this cover, was pretty smart. If you take a close look at the specs of the Amazon image size, and all of the stores have a slightly different max spec or max ratio. What A.G. Riddle did here is he actually used more of the screen space because his book proportionally is wider than these other two books. Now, it's like he went out and demanded more shelf space from Amazon, and he didn't have to pay a darn thing for it. They just gave it to him. He took advantage of the specs that were available. I think that's very, very smart, and I'd recommend it to any author who's building out a book cover. Work with your book cover designer. Make sure they know that they're familiar with the specs for the various stores. You might have to order multiple size combos and color depths and max sizes or min sizes from them. But I just want to point that out about the Atlantis Cheen. I like the Atlantis Cheen. Very simple, very clear, very easy to understand that this is probably a war story, or it might be science fiction. That looks like that might be a submarine stuck on the side of that ice mountain. It's kind of interesting. The middle book is traditionally published. It's by David Weber, one of my favorite authors. And this is actually, Shadow of Freedom is actually a part of a 12 or 10 or 14 book series. There's a ton of Honor Harrington books out there. This book I happen to know because I have on my shelf we're looking at what was essentially the print cover. So this traditional publisher didn't go back and say, well, let me create a clean version of my cover that's readable in all respects for my online sales on Amazon, which is a bit strange because most traditional publishers probably sell half of their trade pub books through Amazon, at least, and ebooks and print books. So in my opinion, this is a little busy, but it does confirm the genre for me. It does look like it was professionally produced. The slightly jagged edges you see around David Weber's name is more likely, well, that actually could be a problem with either my upsizing of the title or maybe a high-quality one wasn't inserted by the traditional publisher, which is unfortunate. The one on the right, the self-published book, The Master, I can't even tell who the author is. And I don't, the Piccolo, I think that's a Piccolo. It's not a very striking image to me. It's very common for self-published authors to want to use a black background with a red swash of color through it because it looks so dramatic. It paints a very forceful picture of your book. It also is very hard to make it look good typography-wise. I think that they've got poor font choice here, and they could have certainly done something to help make the title and the author's name pop out much better than they've done here. Let's take a look at some nonfiction examples, because now we're looking for all the same first three things we were looking at. Do we have a good-looking image? Can you tell me the genre or the subject area by looking at it without the text? Does it look like it was professionally produced? And what's the benefit promise? So on the left, I've got the Daniel Plan. I'm almost certain that that is a traditionally published book. The middle one, You Are Why You Eat, is a self-published book, and the one on the right, I'm certain is self-published. I would say that I'm looking for the benefit promise. On the left, I see 40 days to a healthier life. Okay, I get that. If I read this book, I will, in 40 days, have a healthier life. The middle one, change your food attitude, change your life. Okay, so that's pretty clear to me. If I read this book, I can change my food attitude and change my life, which I assume is desirable in a diet book. And then the third one, I think that says Box Set 3 Addiction, Dr. Miriam something. And I think one of the words at the top might say nicotine, but I can't tell very well. So I would give that book on the far right, I would recommend that author go back and absolutely redo that cover, because most readers looking at that cover, unless they've been told to go look for this book, they're going to reject that. They're going to say, I bet that book's not even edited properly. So benefit promise should be conveyed somewhere, and you have to remember the books that we're looking at on our screen right now, these are upsized, okay? So 40 days to a healthier life in the smaller thumbnail size on Amazon might be too small. It won't come off the book. Same thing might be true for change your food attitude, change your life. It's something you have to look at. When you get your book design back from your book designer, make sure you scale it down on your screen to the same size that you see on the Amazon store, so you can get a feel for what it looks like in its small thumbnail size. All right, let's move on to the next topic, book title selection. You may have already titled your book, in which case, and you may have no interest in retitling it. But I do want to give you, for those of you who haven't titled it yet, I want to give you something to think about. And that is that, especially for nonfiction, your book title is a really important element of your search engine optimization game plan. All right, so what do I mean by search engine optimization? If you're not familiar with that term, I have to tell you something that you may not know. In the United States, more than 50% of all product searches, so I'm on the web, I'm looking for a new Weber grill for Father's Day, or I'm looking for a new blade for my lawnmower, or a new book, or a specialized battery for my cell phone. Those product searches start here in this search box in Amazon, not at Google, not at Google.com. Google.com has 2/3 of the world's search traffic, but in the United States, a tremendous amount of product traffic starts right here in this search box. And so you have to understand that part of your job when putting together the metadata for your book, and your title is a piece of metadata, is to make sure that you are capturing search engine, you're using search engine optimization best practices. If you haven't gone out yet to research the key search engine, the key phrases and the key words for your topic, especially your nonfiction topic, you need to go out and do that immediately, because you're going to use it in 3 places, and we'll talk more about this later in the presentation. You'll use it not only in your title and your subtitle, but you'll also use it on Amazon directly into their key phrase metadata slot, and you'll also use it in your book description. So, you know, I've given a couple of ideas you want to look for here when you're doing your nonfiction title, such as you know, play on words, twist other popular titles. You know, how many people have seen 50 Shades of Chicken, right? A cookbook about how to dress chicken in 50 different ways to make delicious chicken meals, right? Or, you know, solve a problem for your reader in the title, how to lose 40 pounds in 40 days. Or get ready for your wedding. You know, whatever the answer is, whatever the problem is, you want your book title perhaps to be the answer. So you really need to do some keyword research to make sure that your title is using a few of those keywords. When we get over to the fiction world, search engine optimization is not so critical, although I would be one who would argue that if I were putting David Weber's book up into Amazon, there is no doubt in my mind that I would put the name of his main character, Honor Harrington, as one of his key search phrases. And the reason is that he's got so many books with Honor Harrington in them, and it's known as the Honor Harrington series, although none of his books have Honor Harrington's name in the title. So I would, if I were, for every one of David Weber's books I put up, I would positively put Honor Harrington as a key phrase. So when you're doing your book titling, you know, you've got to be, you want to be genre appropriate. You might use a concept from the story like Divergent, or you might want to use a story event like The Hunger Games. So you know, you might use your book as a source for your titles. But here's probably the most important one to me. You want to pick a title for your fiction book that is easy to remember, and I'll also say easy to say, because you want your book title to be part of a campaign of positive word of mouth. If people can read your book, enjoy it, remember the title, and then tell someone else the title in a way that's easy to understand, easy to spell, you've given the chances of your book generating a positive word of mouth campaign a much higher probability. Overall, go for short titles, 2 to 3 words, no more than 6 words. Use a subtitle for your series name if you've got a novel and it's got a series, or for your benefit promise. And be original, but beware of controversy. It's okay to have a title that reaches out and grabs people and maybe parodies another title, but if you've got one that's very controversial and might tend to turn off people who won't even bother to learn about the content of your book, it's simply that the title alone would scare them away. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm reading it right now. I think it's Richard Dawkins, The God Delusion. Right? Now, there's a title that's going to turn off a significant segment of the U.S. public. All right? So you want to be careful about limiting yourself. You're limiting your audience on your title alone. Okay, reviews. I always call these social proof, right? It's how many stars do you have? What's your average star rating? And how many reviews do you have supporting that? I tell authors all the time the first thing, when authors come to me and say, I need help marketing, I say the first thing we're going to do before we do any marketing is we're going to go look at your Amazon sales page, because there's two things that you have to bear in mind as an author. You do not want to spend any money on marketing your book until you're very confident that your Amazon sales page is ready to receive the traffic and close the sale. And a very important element of that checklist of is my Amazon sales page ready is you need to have a dozen reviews. You need to have a dozen people, whether they're giving you 1 star or 5 stars or 4 stars or 3 stars, you need to have at least a dozen, because your audience is going to come to your page and they're going to say, oh, look, other people read this book and they liked it. I'm interested in it. I'll probably like it too. I'll take a chance on it. Don't bother marketing until you have a dozen people out there that support that concept on your book. Work really hard to get to a dozen. Keep working until you've got a couple of dozen, 24 or so, and then relax. 24 is a good enough start. Having more than 24 probably isn't going to turn someone from a non-buyer into a buyer. And just know this, that when you hit 100, and you probably do it organically, when you hit 100 reviews, you may see a spike in your sales, because Amazon will start putting your book into the if you like this, you'll like that flow at 100. Bear in mind that if your average rating is 5 stars, that looks suspicious, so be careful. Also bear in mind what shows above the fold. I'm going to talk about that for a second. So let's take a look at Jay Allen's book. So here's a book I was looking at earlier today. I actually haven't read any of Jay Allen's book. This is book 8 in a series. And let's just take a look real quick at his reviews. So I'm going to scroll down his reviews. Now, when I say above the fold, I'm talking about when I get down to the reviews, which reviews show without me having to click on show more reviews. So at the very bottom here, it says see all customer reviews, and all of the reviews that show above see all 25 customer reviews, I call above the fold. Now, let's take a look at what Jay has above the fold. Jay has good reviews above the fold. Actually, I want to look at a different book from him. It's this one. I was looking at it today. So here's the first book in his series. It's called Crimson Worlds 1. And you can tell he's got 288 customer reviews, which is fantastic. An average star rating of 4 stars is good. He's got a pretty good histogram, a pretty good distribution of ratings. Now, here's where I would advise. Jay's not one of our clients. I've never met Jay. I just happen to like to read science fiction and found this one today when I was looking for some examples. If we were helping Jay, one of the things I would tell Jay is, Jay, take a look at your reviews above the fold. All right, I've got a 5-star review, I've got a 2-star review, a 1-star review, a 5-star review, a 2-star review. And then I could click on see all 288 other reviews. And if you look at Jay's histogram of reviews, it's pretty standard stuff. This chart of showing you how many are in which category. I would tell Jay that you need to get your family and friends together, get Jay's army together, and do an upvote and a downvote campaign. You should ask your friends to go in and take every review that's less than 4 stars and see where it says, was this review helpful to you? No. And, oops, it wants me to log in. Sorry, I shouldn't have actually clicked. And then go down to the 1-star reviews and say, no, this wasn't helpful. And then go to the 4-star and the 5-star reviews amongst that 288 and upvote them by saying, yes, this was helpful. This isn't deceitful. You want people to read the reviews and make up their own mind, but the point is, I want my reviews that are above the fold to be good, and you can influence this. You don't want your 2s and your 1s above the fold. You want your 4s and your 5s above the fold. Okay, I hope I'm not getting anybody upset when I say that. Okay, let's move on to pricing and your research and your strategy, right? Price flexibility is one of the most powerful tools for self-published authors, right? It was even more powerful when Apple and the big 6 publishers, well, with the exception of Random House, were all colluding together to keep prices high. They essentially created a market pricing umbrella that allowed us as self-publishers to scoot in low and still make more money than traditionally published authors do for every book that was sold. There are some traditional publishers who are now experimenting with 99 cents or $2.99 or $3.99. So they are coming down into the territory where self-published authors typically price their books. The point is this. Do the research in your genre. Understand what traditional publishers are doing with the prices on their authors' books. Understand what other self-published authors are doing with the prices of their books. Look at how the books in the top 10 or top 100 are priced, and figure out what's my current marketing strategy. Is my marketing strategy, because I'm a debut author and this is the first book, to get maximum readership, so I want 99 cents, and if I sell 5,000 at 99 cents, sure, I only make, what is that, $1,750 or so, but I've got 1,000 readers out there, right? So that's pretty good. In fact, that's a fantastic start for a self-published book. And at 1,000 readers, I'm probably got my 24 reviews, I bet. Maybe I'm even headed toward 100. You've got to know what your competitors are doing. You've got to understand what bookstore prices are, especially when you price the print-on-demand version of your book. Also, you might want to be thinking about free. You know, how do I set my price book for free? Well, that's easy. You put your book up in Smashwords, you set the price to 0 there, and then you have a friend email Amazon and say, hey, I saw this book for $0 over in Smashwords. Why does it cost whatever it costs on your site? And Amazon will match that price. And there are a lot of authors out there, especially in the science fiction and fantasy field, who they write trilogies or they write 4-book series, and they'll make book number 1 free. Because they believe that if you like my world and you like my characters, and you read my first book and you get into it, you're going to want to know what happens next. So whatever your marketing strategy is, maybe it's a revenue maximization strategy, adjust your price. Your price shouldn't stay the same for the life of your book. You wouldn't expect it to. You're going to adjust it from time to time. One other question I get asked a lot is, well, okay, Bill, that's all great. What exactly should I price my book at if I want to make the most money possible? And I think the best answer for that comes from Mark Coker. He's the CEO of Smashwords, and every year he goes to the Romance Writers Association, and he gives a talk sharing a tremendous amount of price elasticity data for all of the books that Smashwords distributes on behalf of authors in the various bookstores, the various online bookstores. And the first time he did it, the first time he threw this analysis up, it was clear that $2.99 was the revenue maximization strategy. I wouldn't get as many readers as I got at 99 cents, but I would make the most money at $2.99. That number has since gone up a little bit. It's now up in the $3.49 to $3.99, sometimes $4.29 range. And I was at a conference with Mark it's about a month and a half ago, and he said the next time I give the data, we're going to break it out by genre. So we're going to be able to tell romance writers and science fiction writers and thriller writers and diet book writers and business improvement writers where they should be pricing their book for revenue maximization. But for the moment, the answer is it's probably somewhere around $2.99 to $3.49. Again, remember the Amazon royalty bands when you're pricing your ebooks, 70% versus 35%. Think about the status of your brand. Are you well known? Is this a series? You know, it's very common to give the first book away in the series for free once you have 3 or 4 out there, and then price the next 2 perhaps at $2.99 or $3.99, and price the last 4 at $5.99. Also, again, research. Check out what are established authors doing versus debut authors. What are traditional published authors doing versus self-publishing authors? And where is your book in its life cycle? You're running experiments. What experiment are you running today? You have to think about all of these elements as you adjust your price probably once quarterly. You're going to want to look at your metadata and review it just about once every quarter. All right, let's talk about book description. We had a detailed, I think the last seminar we gave was a detailed seminar on book descriptions and all of the different things you can do. I've pulled probably the most vital information out of here. The key thing I want you to take away is that your description is your personal sales representative. When they talk about, you hear this concept of hand selling a book. It's this mythical state of existence where when you walk into a bookstore, the bookstore staff is so familiar with you because you come there once a week to buy 3 more books that they know exactly what you like, and they know when a new book has come out that you would like to purchase, and they'll take you over to the section, they'll pull the book off the shelf, and they'll say, Mr. Van Orsdal, I think you'd really like this book. That's called hand selling. Your book description is your personal sales representative. It's the only thing that's going to hand sell your book. Dylan chimed in with a question, I think, for our last slide. Excuse me. He said, why 1 cent less of a full dollar? And the answer, Dylan, is that at the $2.99 level, $2.99 in the Amazon world for ebooks is the first time in the Amazon royalty bands where you earn 70% royalty instead of 35%. So in Amazon, you can price your book between, let me go back here. Sorry, you can price your book between 99 cents and $2.98, and you'll get 35% royalty. At $2.99 to $9.99, you get 70% royalty. At $10 and above, you go back to the 35% royalty band for your ebook. So, Amazon has an interest that is keeping ebooks priced between $2.99 and $9.99. So that's why. And by the way, if your question was, well, why $3.99 or why $3.49? There's some retail theory out there that says those are good numbers. I've also read a recent report that said actually 99 and 95 are no longer good retail pricing numbers. And you want something like 24 or 47 or 43. You want numbers that don't look quite so calculated to get every last dime out of your customer. So let's go back to book description. So your book description, as I said, it's hand selling your book. The book description that you write is going to be, the basic one that you write is going to be in everywhere that your book is sold. You've spent a year, you spent 6 months, you spent 3 months writing your book. Don't just toss off your book description in 5 minutes and think that you're done. It deserves a lot of time and a lot of attention. It is your book's ambassador when you can't be around to tell people about your book. You're going to want to, within your book description, employ your keywords and your key phrases. I talked about those earlier. I'll talk about them again when we talk about researching them. Now, in Amazon, you can only insert in the metadata behind the scenes 7 key phrases. In your book description, you can use as many as you'd like. So if your topic, lose weight or improve business profitability or whatever your nonfiction topic might be, has a lot of buzzwords around it, load your description up with those buzzwords. Absolutely, you shouldn't feel like you're limited to just the 7 you were using in your metadata. So let's talk about book description formulas. Okay, there are 2 formulas I think that you can't go wrong with. They're pretty universal. And in the fiction world, the formula sort of sounds like this. What's the setting? What's the inciting incident? Who's the protagonist? What's the conflict? What's the antagonist? Who's the antagonist? And what's the hook? Now, you don't have to use all these. There are plenty of descriptions that only use a few of these. But your readers are, here's what they're looking for. They are not looking for a synopsis of your fiction novel. In fact, there are readers who get pretty upset at too much information reveal in the description. What they want are the basics, just enough to get me interested to read this book. Also, now let's move on to nonfiction. So nonfiction formula elements, this is very simple stuff. This is, what's your benefit promise? Lose 40 pounds in 40 days. What's your unique selling proposition? On the soup diet. What are your expert credentials? I was a chef at Guide Michelin at 5-star restaurants all around Europe. I was the soup chef, right? Put some testimonials in there. Hey, I lost 50 pounds in 40 days, and my name's Bill V. And what's your call to action? Scroll up and buy this book, or start enjoying soup today, or whatever the call to action is. I think that's optional if you have a very strong selling proposition and testimonials. Your call to action is optional, but you positively want to follow this formula. What's my benefit promise? What's unique about my book? And who am I to be writing this book? And who has already experienced the benefits of my system in this book? Now, there's a special case of nonfiction books out there. They're the narrative nonfiction types, and I recommend that you use the fiction formula for narrative nonfiction. So for your memoir, for your historical nonfiction, for reality books, use the setting, inciting incident, protagonist, conflict, antagonist, hook formula for those books. Make the book sort of sound and feel more thrilling, if you will, than sort of a standard nonfiction book. Beware of below the fold. I'm going to show you what that means in just a moment. We talked about the definition of below the fold for reviews. Below the fold for your book descriptions a little bit differently. Let's take a look at that, actually. I'm going to go look at Jay Allen's number 8 book in his Crimson World series, okay? So here I am on Jay's book description. And you can see the final battle has begun. Galvin Stark, blah, 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 paragraph, blah, 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 paragraph, blah, blah, blah. Wait a minute. What's this? Show more. Okay, so this author believes that in order for me to get to the hook, and to be interested in purchasing this book, he probably, I believe Jay, he probably believes I need to read this whole book description. Well, so he's asking me to click on this button, show more. Okay, well, that's not horrible, right? I click on the show more. It's not horrible at all. However, and by the way, notice that his hook, but even legends die. All right, so I'm guessing that there's some legends amongst these Marines, and I'm guessing some of them might die maybe. And if you'll notice, that hook was not, I couldn't see it above the fold. So to get to the hook, to get to the compelling reason to read this book, I need to click on the Show More button. Every single time you are on a conversion page and you make your customer click one more thing, you lose somewhere between 5 and 60% of your traffic. So that means 1 out of 20 people that get to this page that would have bought are going away because they're just too darn lazy to click on Show More. And it's your own fault, dear author. You made them click on Show More. You asked them to invest more in your book. My guess is that Jay could probably take some time, shorten up this description, get the hook above the fold, and if I were him, I would, see on the bottom of his book description, the text becomes grayer, sort of half gray. It's a fade to white at the bottom. If, as his last sentence, instead he had over a 250,000 Crimson World books sold, you know, the compelling reason, the compelling social proof, if 250,000 other people bought my books, you'll like my book too. If that was his great outline, then the Show More button wouldn't feel very onerous to me. It'd actually feel like, hey, I wonder what else he has to say other than making that pretty strong claim. And so I'd click on the Show More button. So just something to think about when you're doing your book description. Test it out. See if any of it falls below the fold or not. And then finally, I've got to recommend that you've got to format your book description, right? And by the way, there's a different format for KDP versus CreateSpace versus Bowker, right? If you went and purchased your own ISBN number from Bowker, one of the things you have to do is take all this metadata that we're talking about and put it in your Bowker listing as well. And so your ability to format your description in Bowker, in CreateSpace, and in KDP is going to vary. And what do I mean by vary? Let me show you an example. So here's a book by a traditional publisher, by David Baldacci. I mean, these guys are serious. This is a major New York Times bestseller with his most recent book. And here's the Kindle edition of his book. Let me scroll down to his book description. All right, here I am in the book description, and look at this. There's no paragraph breaks. I'm not even certain if they've got the line breaks after the sentences correctly. There's certainly no headlines. You know, I would expect this to be a headline if nothing else. This looks terrible, right? And it's even worse if we look at his paperback book description. So look at his book description here. I'm going to click on his paperback book description. Look at that. First of all, there's a below the fold. It's one giant run-on. Again, doesn't have the appropriate spaces between his paragraphs. The text itself is not bad, but the format's no good. Now, just for fun, I went and used a tool that I recommend to all the authors we work with, and I like this tool so much I want to build one for BookFuel. And this is what the tool looks like. It's called the Amazon Enhanced Description Maker. It's from authorinmarketingclub.com. We have no relationship with authorinmarketingclub.com. We are not affiliates of theirs. They probably don't even know who we are, but I recommend all of my authors use them. You can go sign up today for a free trial at authorinmarketingclub.com. And as part of your free, I think it's a 10-day trial maybe, you can get access to the Amazon Enhanced Description Maker. And there's a little video. It's easy as pie. I spent about 7.5 seconds. I simply cut and pasted from the traditional published description into the Amazon. And now what happens is the tool gives me back a block of HTML text. That is regular text all run together with some HTML tags in it. And when I paste that into the KDP system, this is what I get. I get proper breaks between each sentence. I get some nice headline formatting so that it looks like it belongs on the page. It looks professional. I can have some call-out headlines. I can have some call to action. I positively recommend everyone, if you're not an HTML expert, and I am not, go to authormarketingclub.com, sign up, and use their free tool. It's pretty valuable. Now, having told you that, there's one caveat that I have to give you, which is that when you use that tool, the block of text that it gives you back, and we are really diving in the weeds here, is essentially a block of HTML text. Now, in KDP, that description enhancer gives you access to all of these HTML tags. And, you know, bold is bold, I is italics, font lets you choose what font it's in, subscript, superscript, underline, and so on and so forth. In KDP, you can use all of the different headline styles, but in CreateSpace, you can't. So when you take that text back from the description enhancer, you're going to have to eliminate the start and end of each of these HTML tags by simply, you know, deleting them or backspacing over them. So then you'll have a description in KDP that looks good, a description in CreateSpace, a description in KDP that looks great, a description in CreateSpace which looks good, and then you'll have your backer description. But that's, you know, I recommend that everybody give that a shot because it can make your description, once you've got it text perfect, look so much better. Okay, print on demand. We're getting close to the end here. Last few slides. Print on demand. We recommend that everybody set up print on demand for their book, but especially nonfiction authors. The uptake of the ebook format by nonfiction readers is nowhere near. In fact, it's probably half what it is for fiction readers. So fiction readers in some categories, 70% of your people, for your fiction authors, 70% of your audience wants to read your book as an ebook. For nonfiction, it's probably half that or less. So you've got to have a print-on-demand option. You've got to have a print option available for your nonfiction reader. Now, in most cases, print-on-demand is the way to go. There are some cases, and we've got a couple clients that like this right now, where they've got so many photos or so many tables or so many whatever that they actually need to go to a short-run printer and have 500 or 1,000 copied and set themselves up as a seller in Amazon and do the warehouse stocking option. So they just send a few books to Amazon at a time and get themselves up so their readers have a print option for their book. Definitely getting yourself set up for print on demand isn't expensive, but it is going to take a little more work and a few more elements. When you do it, we highly recommend that you do it in both CreateSpace and the Ingram Spark system. Use a common trim size for both. And by the way, the trim size you use should be one that most of the people in your genre are using. And don't select expanded distribution in either system. You don't need it, and it's actually can be counterproductive. And make sure you price your print on demand correctly, right? In the fiction world, your print on demand is sort of is more like a free advertising, right? And you probably want to set your price so you're making less than $1 a book. I don't mean set your price to $1. I mean set your price so you're only making about $1 a book or less. Definitely keep your price to what it might look like if someone walked in a bookstore for your book. Nonfiction's different. Nonfiction print-on-demand pricing is much more market-driven and very circumstantial-driven as well, so it's hard to give any kind of blanket advice there. Okay, let's talk about categories, also known as genres, also known as subject areas, also known as Amazon browse path, right? So if I'm in Amazon and I want to start drilling around for a book, I might drill well, actually, let's look at the slide instead. I might drill down to science fiction, and then I might click on First Contact. Or I might drill to science fiction and click on short stories or space opera or time travel. Now, so there's a couple very important things to know. When you're going to choose your genre, I've talked to a lot of authors who said, well, it's fiction, so I just put my book in literature and fiction. No. If you have a romance book, it's literature and fiction romance. It's actually literature and fiction romance Regency romance, or it's literature and fiction romance historical romance, or it's literature and fiction science fiction space opera, or drill down as far as you can, because people who are browsing to look for your kind of book, they want to be able to drill in and see what are the top 10, what are the top 100, what are the top 20 books in the free and in the paid space. So find someone who's writing books like yours and go see what they've done with their genres. Where do you see their books show up? Also, you have to know that the Kindle browse path list, or tree, I call it the tree, is different than the Amazon bookstore browse path tree. I've got a perfect example right here on the screen. If I go and look right now in the Kindle science fiction section, I'm going to find more books, more different subgenres in the ebook space than I do in the Amazon book space. So the Amazon Kindle ebook space has a more detailed genre browse path selection set than the books do. You just have to know that they're different. You need to select 2 Kindle categories. You need to select 2 print categories. So you get, for each book you put in, you get 2 categories in each format. Your first category is the most relevant one. Catch the people who are drilling down into science fiction, post-apocalyptic. Your second category, you want it to be absolutely the smallest possible that you can dominate. Because if you get some good sales in that thing, in that small subsection, it can push you to the top of the list. You can be #1 in your category. You can claim you're an Amazon #1 bestseller. And you might also find you get dumped into the, if you like this, you'll like that selection set. Similarly, for your print-on-demand book, you're going to want to pick 2. And they may be 2 different ones than you picked for your Kindle book. That might actually be good to pick 2 different ones. Again, if you've got a multi-genre book or a multi-subject nonfiction book, drill around. Get very familiar with the neighborhood, if you will. It's like you're driving around looking for a house or looking for a place to buy a house. You want to get a feel for the neighborhood and how it relates to what kind of house you want to buy. It's the same thing for your book. You've got a book, you know what's in your book, and you want to find the right place to house your book. And you've got to spend a significant amount of time, and you've probably already done this, right? You've already drilled into all of the dystopian, and you've looked at the top 100 dystopian free and the top 100 dystopian paid books. You know what kind of images are on the cover. Usually there's a mushroom cloud in the background. Usually the covers have some red and orange on them. You know that it's often a picture of refugees who aren't dressed very well and look like they're very hungry, right? So you already know, because you did that research, because it informed the creation of your own metadata, including your book cover, for example. One thing you have to know about the CreateSpace genre selection tool, when you upload your book to CreateSpace, you might find that the choices they offer you when you go to select your categories in CreateSpace, those choices don't match the Amazon bookstore browse path tree. Okay, that's a mouthful, but the point is that CreateSpace uses, I believe, the standard BISAC codes. We're getting kind of technical, but the point is you may have to send an email to CreateSpace, and you may have to tell them, for my print book that you are showing in the Amazon store, I need you to tag it with these 2 Amazon book genres, and give them the whole browse path all the way from the top down to the final subcategory that you want to be in. Also, this is a minor detail, make sure that, and it might take a week or so, make sure your ebook and your print-on-demand book are on the same sales page in Amazon. That way all your reviews are aggregated in one place. And readers can immediately see the choice in front of them. They can choose either book. Okay, we're getting close to the end. In the same way that categories or your genre selection is a behind-the-scenes choice that you make when you upload your book, the same thing is true for your ability to enter keywords or key phrases in your metadata when you're uploading your book to Amazon.com. So when you're in the kdp.amazon.com, the Kindle Direct Publishing system, it's going to ask you to give 7 keywords. You can actually give 7 key phrases. You just separate them by commas. Phrases are more powerful than words. So when you're doing your keyword research, go find the most powerful phrases that drive people directly into the subject where your book solves their problem or answers their questions. Make those keywords specific, very specific to your story or your topic. You've got to go do this research, once a year to update your key phrases, and look for search terms that stand out for the number of searches conducted daily. I've got 4 different tools on here. They each have pros and cons, but the key is to pick a tool, or maybe do all of them, but go out there and look for the keywords that are driving people into the topic that your nonfiction book solves. One very important caveat: don't use other authors' names, I need an apostrophe in there, or their book titles as your keywords or key phrases. Amazon considers that to be sort of a fireable offense, if you will, and if you do that, and they catch you, which they will, as they have these great robots that crawl all the metadata, they're probably going to eliminate your book from their bookstore and maybe prevent you from re-uploading it with the same title or the same ISBN number. So you need to be very careful. Don't you might say, well, I write medical thrillers, so I'm going to put C.J. Lyons as my keyword, or I rate great science fiction just like Hugh Howey's books, so I'm going to put Hugh Howey as my keyword. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. Dylan's got a question. He says, can keywords be changed at any time? Yes. Your keywords, your key phrases can be updated daily if you want. And I highly encourage you to explore. And as you go and use these 4 tools to find the right key phrases for your book, I strongly urge you to consider putting them into the title of your book, putting them into the subtitle of your book for nonfiction, and or loading them, or definitely loading them into your book description, so that your book has a higher SEO score for a given key phrase. Don't be obviously repetitive about it, but and maybe don't repeat it too many times in your description, but you can use more than your 7 phrases in your book description. Absolutely. Okay, so now let's get to the last one, author page. Okay, so last element, your author page. If you don't have an author page, I want you to go set one up today. Even if you're using a pen name, you can drive traffic to your author blog. As a fiction author, you can position yourself, your writing. For nonfiction authors, it's very important to build your credibility and authority. I want to show you an example of Jay Allen's page. We were looking at this before. I'm going to sort of jump on this. I want to show you his page real quick. So here's Jay Allen, right? This guy's got 14 books out there. Okay, he's doing very well, I think, as an author. In fact, I know he's doing well because if you go look at the bottom at his author rank, he's number 17 in Kindle ebooks for science fiction. He's number 25 in books for science fiction and fantasy. He's a top 100 author in his chosen category. So super impressed, and he's even got some customer discussions going on here. Now, the one thing, if Jay were on the phone today, the one thing I would recommend that he do is, again, this concept of below the fold. Well, I wonder what's below the fold for Jay. I mean, I kind of read his bio here, and yes, I got the word here, among, all right, let's see more. Among other things, I write best-selling Crimson World series. Okay, so, darn, his very last sentence, join my mailing list at crimsonworlds.com for updates and new releases. Wow. When an author tells me I need help marketing, the one thing I tell them is that you want everything you do to drive your fans and people that are interested in your work toward a permission-based email list. And so, like, literally, for me, the most important part of Jay Allen's biography, maybe the most important part of his whole author page, he's buried behind below the fold, right? You'd never know that he had a way to sign up directly with him to learn more about his books, when he's got the next book coming out, when he's going to ask his fans for feedback on his next book cover and book description, right? That whole engagement thing is lost because he put it below the fold. Notice on the right-hand side of your Amazon author page, you can connect your Twitter account, connect your blog. If he had a video for one of his books or for himself as an author, he could put it right here. So, I'd say, first of all, Jay's doing a great job. I mean, yeah, we got a couple things that we might recommend he improve, but he's done a great job with his whole author page. It's good stuff. Final recommendation. So we're right back where we started, right? Have a professional book cover. It should answer those 3 or 4 questions depending on whether you're a fiction or nonfiction author. Your book title is not just an artistic representation of your work, but it's also an SEO element, so you have to treat it as such. Your reviews play a critical part in the standard consumer buying behavior, right? They can be a substitute for trial. So instead of clicking on your book and looking inside and reading the first few pages, people can look at your reviews and say, oh, yeah, it looks like a dozen people like this book, and it's got 4 or 5 stars. I'll probably like it too. I'll give it a try. Your pricing, which you're going to experiment with, should match your marketing strategy. Your book description sets the hook. It gets people to buy your book right now, to go scroll up and buy this book. Scroll up and click on the Buy Now button. Your print-on-demand version offers choice, especially for nonfiction authors. Very, very important for nonfiction books. Your categories or your browse paths or your genre selections, They help people who are browsing and trying to find your book. They can also help you achieve a #1 or top 10 or top 100 ranking within a specific genre if you choose a nice small one. The keywords or key phrases, they can improve your in-Amazon search engine optimization. So once you know what those key phrases are, put them in your title, put them in your subtitle, put them in your book description. Also load them as part of your metadata. And finally, have an author page. It adds to your credibility, and it gives you lots more opportunities for engagement and even potentially the opportunity to help build your permission-based email list, which would be absolutely the most valuable thing. Dylan's got a question here. It says, does Smashwords let you design your book cover? Dylan, I can't recall if Smashwords has a book cover designer feature. I think they might have just implemented one recently, but I don't know that for sure. I know that Amazon does, but here's the one thing I would say about services like that. I would say two things. One, I'm always wary of a publicly available free service because now there may be a chance that other people will be using the same eye-catching image that I select. That might be confusing, especially if it's in my genre. Usually the ability to use those tools to compose multiple images and do fun stuff is limited. And then finally, and this is most important to me, which is I want control over my images. I want the files myself. So no matter who I use, I want to make sure whatever service I use, I'm allowed to take those files and use them in any way I want. So if you decide to engage, and I highly recommend that you do, a professional cover designer, I would positively make sure that you're getting the files back. And if you use a service, make sure you're getting the files back. Same thing's true for your conversions. You should get the files back. And I think if self-published authors sort of had some of this stuff in mind, we would see a lot fewer of them get ripped off by the old vanity presses that are still sitting out there. So we've got, I think, just a few minutes for, we're a little bit over. Okay, so if you've got any questions, I encourage you, please give me a call. I'm happy to pick up the phone and chat with you. You're also welcome to email me. I'm bill.vanorsdale@bookfuel.com. I'm happy to answer emails. Again, if you want a copy of these slides, I am more than happy to send them to you. Sometime around midnight, you'll probably receive an email with a link back to this broadcast. If you liked it, share it with somebody, or hold on to it and review it later when you are working on your Amazon page and trying to pump up your sales. Thanks again, everybody, for joining, and have a great evening.